Hello, this is Deborah Yao with Black Education TV, and I'm going to be discussing violence in the school system from a teacher's point of view. If we are honest with ourselves, we can say with all certainty that many of the children that attend public school today are not innocent as it relates to behavior. Now, we know that some of the children that are in public school are very good, and they do what they're supposed to. They go there to learn. They heed the instructions of both their parents and the teachers. So I am not talking about those students. I wanted to say that up front because many times people seem to have hearing problems when you are addressing a certain issue and they want to focus on something that you weren't even talking about. I am talking about children that have become unruly, disrespectful, violent, and all kinds of things. And from a teacher's point of view, from a teacher's standpoint, we have to understand what that's like to be, especially a female teacher. I'm going to say especially a female teacher. If you have some young man who's already bearded up and mustached down, have muscles like the Incredible Hulk, and he's standing 6 foot tall, and he is standing up over you and telling you to shut up, has a chair above his head threatening to hit you with it if you say one more word to him. Understand that these kind of things are happening in public schools. Many of us, when we see stories where a teacher has accosted a student, we only see it from one point of view. We see it from a parent's point of view of how dare this person do this to my child. But how many videos have we seen where a teacher was sitting there afraid for her life or afraid for his life because there is a student threatening to do bodily harm, a student who is capable of doing that? The problem is here in America, we have coddled children to the point of what we are seeing happening today. We've coddled them to the point where they think they're children when they're in their 30s. They're behaving as children at age 30 years old, sometimes well into 40 and 50. They are stuck in perpetual youth because of how we have chosen to do things. Back in Martin Luther King's days, he was well into adulthood and manhood in his early 20s. But in today's time, a young man in his 20s behaves much like a teenager, not ready to cross over into manhood by any means. Violent in nature in many cases. A lot of you don't understand the sacrifice that a teacher makes. Now, I'm not saying this about every teacher because, as we pointed out before, there are some teachers who have some serious problems as it relates to looking at your children like they're a piece of sexual meat for them to enjoy. I am not talking about those teachers. I'm not talking about those who belittle students who are trying their best. I'm not talking about teachers that are racist, who refuse to educate children that are not white. I'm not talking about those teachers. I'm talking about teachers who genuinely fear for their lives. I have seen so many videos. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a video earlier today where a teacher body slammed a young man. Now, this young man was no small, tiny, little, frail fella. And we all know at this point, unless you are choosing to be willfully blind and ignorant, we all know at this point that some kids go to school and they are not there to learn. They are there to socialize. They are there to terrorize. They are there to bully. This is why we have such a major problem with bullying, because there are kids who are not there to learn, but they are there to interrupt and disturb the environment, the educational environment. And they have other students afraid of them. They have school staff afraid of them. And they have parents afraid of them. And this is why these parents are so happy to get them out of the house and essentially shove their problem off on everybody else. We all want to sit back and pretend like we don't know that this is what is happening. Like we don't understand that these children are under some type of influence that is not natural. We remember incidents coming up. My husband told me of an incident when he was coming up, when he was in high school, and my husband is in his 50s. But there was an incident where one student in his class told the teacher, if you say one more word, I'm going to take this chair and bust you across your head. The teacher asked the student to just sit down, and just with the teacher merely saying sit down, that qualified for that one more word that the student told the teacher not to make. And so this big school desk went flying across the room towards this teacher. And that teacher had to dart out of the classroom to save their own life. But we want to sit back and pretend like we're sending little angels off to be educated. Many people are sending these children off because they don't want to deal with them. They have created a monster, and they feel that this child needs to be dealt with by someone else. And they use the school system as a babysitting station to get them off of their hands for a few hours out of the day, because they don't want to deal with them. So I just wanted to do this video from a teacher's point of view, from a teacher's standpoint, when you have unruly students. Because I have been a student in the class where you look and kids coming up, I've seen the same thing where kids are so vile, so vicious towards other students, towards staff. And we all want to pretend like it does not happen. I shared a story some time ago where there was a pack of girls who saw another young lady who had long hair. She was very attractive. And they decided that she needed to be punished for that. So what they did was they all cornered her after school, beat her down, and cut all of her hair off. And yet, we want to pretend like this stuff does not happen and is not happening. Violence in the school system is at an all-time high. Bullying is at an all-time high. All of this treachery that we see is at an all-time high because parents have neglected their role of training up their children in the way that they should go. And so they send them off to other people to deal with what they didn't deal with. And because they didn't deal with it, now other children or other students have to be terrorized by these demons or these hell on wheels that you have raised, that you've given birth to. And when something does happen, and I know many of you may think that this is cold, but I'm looking at things from a teacher's point of view, a teacher's standpoint, and from the standpoint of a parent who has lost a child to bullying because someone didn't want to raise their child. Another parent lost their child because you didn't handle your business. It's time for us to stop coddling those who want to do wickedly. And look at other people who are affected by this. When someone else doesn't raise their child right or someone else doesn't do right, there's usually a victim on the other end of that. And we're so busy worried about and concerned about the victimizer, the one who is committing the crimes and punishing other people. We're so busy worried about them being judged or them being not handled fairly and all of this stuff, in which I believe people should be handled fairly. But when you are a person who is always victimizing, at some point you're going to reap what you sow. And don't expect tears from those who have been your victims, even if it wasn't them directly, but their child has been victimized by someone exactly like you, or some teacher who had to quit their job. I also know of teachers who have had to quit their jobs because they are afraid of students. We are not living in the days of Leave It to Beaver or Little House on the Prairie, where you can go to a schoolhouse and expect to get a real education from people who care about you. The average schoolyard fight back in those times was just a few throws of the fist and it was over with. But in today's time, somebody might not walk out of there alive. As a matter of fact, you have these kids popping off to the point where they want to take the lives of many. So they go in with their automatic weapons and they kill students and teachers to get off frustration that has been built up over time for whatever reason, because the environment of learning in this country has gone to hell in a handbasket. Okay, I'm out.